Hello readers and writers, I'm MJ, and today let's talk about my 24 in 24 indie reads. So at the beginning of 2024, I did a video announcing my readathon for this year, the 24 in 24 indie edition, and it is now August, and I want to give an update on my current indie reads. So my personal goal is to read 24 indie books. The overall goal of the readathon is just to read indie authors and to read more indie authors than maybe you did the year prior. So there's no wrong way to do this readathon. Well, that's not true. The wrong way to do this readathon is to dismiss indie authors as automatically being horrible without giving any of us a chance. But beyond that, the goal of the readathon is just to know that indie publishing is now just a different way of publishing that gives authors a little bit more support for our works, but we have resources and avenues that are usually self-funded instead of publishing funded that give us editors and cover artists and a lot more work that we do ourselves, especially because it is expensive. But that doesn't mean that we're pushing out horrible books, and just kind of giving indie authors a chance in whatever genre that you enjoy reading. So that's the goal of the readathon. For me personally, my quantity goal is to read 24 books in 2024. Since we are in August, that should mean I should be over half. So I should be at the 12 book mark and me announcing all those books to you. Spoiler, I am not. First part of this year has been very chaotic for me. If you've been around, you have known my kid had surgery, we've moved across states, and I have a book that released this year with a series that is starting to release sequentially throughout the last part of this year. So it's been a very weird year for me, and my reading has not been as high as it normally has been in the past. And the first part of the year, I did a lot more audiobook reading, which tends to be a little bit more traditionally published. It's really expensive to get audiobooks published, and it's really hard to find affordable, great audiobook narrators. I'm very grateful that I did find an affordable audiobook narrator that works great with me. She is fantastic and amazing and has narrated all of my books to date, and will probably continue narrating them as long as she wants to work with me. And her name is Sky Alley. It was very important for me to get my books in audiobook just so that they are accessible. I write a lot of autistic main characters, and that's not print. It's not always accessible to autistic individuals. But also, like my first book, I dedicated it to two of my aunts who are older, and both of them are having a difficult time reading it in print. And just to see that accessibility and to allow that to be, like, by putting it in audiobook, it made it more accessible to more readers, and that has been very important to me. But again, it's a funding issue for a lot of audiobook narrators, with us already putting so much financially into our books. So, where am I? As of now, I have finished reading 7 indie published books. So not a horrible number, but definitely less than I would like to be at this point, especially since like so many books I really want to read are indie published. I'm not doing this because I'm like searching for indie books. I have so many indie books on my TBR that are fantastic and I love and turned out to be some of my favorite books. It's just knowing that I'm also supporting indie authors just makes it that much more special. Alright, so enough of that. Let's get into the actual books I have read for the first part of the year. And so this actually will go through what I've read for the end of July. So the first read is Junker 7. This is a fantastic book. It is very trans and autistic rep. I adored it. Science fiction. It, I think, gives a lot of trans rights vibes, like pushing back on the system that's trying to say that we don't exist. And I definitely feel like I felt that same energy and pushed it in a different way in my novel Nerdiverse. And so I resonated with the vibe specifically. There's, okay, every time I mention this book, I'm going to end up mentioning this because I find it hilarious. There's quirky things about the science fiction part of this book, such as the fact that they have cell phones in interplanetary systems, and that the main character got their spaceship off of Craigslist. I find it hilarious. So, there's that. And then the next book I read is Sensory Life on the Spectrum. This I read as part of the Autistic Readathon that I hosted back in May and will host again next year. So definitely stay tuned for more information on that. And this was actually a recommendation by Ren with Readings with Ren. And it is a compilation of autistic authors, and they made a comic book and all about being autistic, and it is phenomenal and everyone should absolutely read it. Then I read How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love, and this is a book by Dean Brin. It is a male romance, and I know I'm not the biggest fan of romance, but it's vampires. It's also excellent writing, and when I read the first book, I immediately fell in love with them as an author. And this second book has autistic rep in it as well, which was great. I also read this for the Readathon in May. And yeah, I'm really going to continue on with this series and this author. They're amazing. I found out that the third book is out, so don't be surprised when I wrap up all the books I read at the end of the year if that's on there as well. Then also for May, I read Early Adopter, and this is by a BIPOC trans, I believe non-binary author, and who is also autistic. And it is excellently written science fiction novel about someone who is aromantic, but is not asexual. And there is sexual fetishes abundantly in the novel, which for me personally was a little bit much, but it was very well handled and well written, and a great story that, knowing that if that's a trigger for you, I mean, you should read as long as that's not a trigger for you, but phenomenal book. Then I picked up Spark Tether. This is a science fiction novel that I recommend for anyone who likes more political science fiction. It extends over a relationship over a long period of time. It is queer. There is a non-binary main character in a relationship with a male character in I would say a queer normative world. It's a fantastic read. Very interesting, very politically intertwined, and much more like harder science fiction that I think I could personally write. It was phenomenally done. And if you really enjoy that kind of writing, hands down, you should pick this up. Then in July, July's Disability Pride Month, I picked up Soul Jar. And this is one I happened upon on social media and had it available at the library, which is fantastic. And it is a collection of short stories by disabled writers, most of which feature disabled main characters. And I enjoyed it. Now, not every story I felt was created equal, so I enjoyed some stories more than others, but the stories I didn't enjoy were very few. Most of them were like phenomenal. Like, the world building is still sticking with me. Like, they were world within worlds and stories. Like, the short story was a story. Like, it held on to you, which is what short stories are supposed to be. They are so well done. It is great that you read it because disabled representation should be normalized in science fiction. So definitely pick it up for that, but know that while you're picking it up, this is a phenomenal book. So pick it up. Like, people that think you have to like skimp on quality just to get representation, that's not true. And all of these books on this list actually exemplify that. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to read indie books. And so the last book on this list is Odd Wolf. And this is a werewolf romance, but it is a romance. But for me, who is not a huge romance fan, it's a little more toned down, so I enjoy it more. But I think people who are romance fans, as long as you are okay with slow burns, which this story definitely needed, then I think you will love it. It does have disability rep in it, and it is extremely well written, and I highly recommend that you pick it up as well. So these are these books are the reasons why I love reading indie, because I'm exposed to so many more autistic authors who find that it is a better avenue to publishing. Disabled writers, BIPOC authors, indie publishing still has barriers, but their traditional publishing is just barred the gate for so many writers that do not meet this standardization. And so that's why I'm doing the 24 and 24 Indie Readathon. And so that is why I will continue to read indie books. I will get to the 24 books. I will make it by the end of the year, and I will have a much bigger wrap up at that point. But let me know what indie books you've read this year that you love. Are you participating in the 24 and 24 Indie Readathon? And if so, please tag me on any of your wrap ups. And as always, keep reading, keep writing, and until next time.